everybody. We're going to try this broadcasting from my office today. We're going to try this little different setup, but I think I'm going to keep 5-minute videos all the same. That seems to be working out okay. Anyway, last time we talked about, in chapter 7, we talked about aerobic respiration, cellular respiration, where we're taking glucose, breaking that down through glycolysis into a couple of pyruvates. It has to go through a process where a single CO2 is removed through a coenzyme. That goes into the citric acid cycle, which feeds the electron transport chain. So all the while we're harvesting energy, generating CO2, and then utilizing O2 to generate water, except to take the electrons off of the electron transport chain, the high energy electrons that have been taken off of the from the glucose through the pyruvate into the citric acid cycle. Those electrons then are on NADH and FADH2, and then those electrons get stripped off, the hydrogens get pumped out, and those electrons then, they have to go somewhere. Well, the electrons get bound to the oxygen, and then those negative oxygens then are able to form water with some of the hydrogen ions within the mitochondrial membrane. All right, and so through all that process, we build up this hydrogen gradient, and then through ATP synthase, we can generate ATP to be used throughout the cell. So that's real quick, kind of what we did last time. There's a lot more to it, but just in a couple of minutes there. All right, now there's a process through ATP synthase is using a process called chemiosmosis. I didn't mention this last time, just want to get this in there. It is just simply the movement. It is osmosis of some sort of an ion. It's not really osmosis being water, but it's the movement of ions across some selectively permeable membrane using this concentration gradient, just like we build up with hydrogen ions here in the membranes of the mitochondria. Then we use chemiosmosis to move those hydrogen ions through this ATP synthase, and that process generates ATP. Okay. Now, where do we go from there? Sorry, my nose itches for some reason. Where do we go from there? Well, to finish out chapter 7, we talked a little bit about fermentation and anaerobic respiration. Now, as we mentioned, the process we've outlined there is what we call an aerobic respiration. That means it requires oxygen, and that's oxygen just comes from the atmosphere. And that oxygen then takes the high energy electrons, and then this becomes negative oxygen, a negative oxygen ion, and then it can grab a couple of hydrogen ions to balance it out. I'm looking down at my clock down here to make sure I stay on time. So again, anytime we use oxygen to complete the respiration process, that is aerobic respiration. This process in most organisms occurs in mitochondria, as we've talked about before, and just to remind us, there's the chemical process where we've got a carbohydrate, add some oxygen, that generates energy, carbon dioxide, and water. And so to completely break down glucose, down here, glucose to carbon dioxide and water, we need oxygen from the atmosphere to do so, and that's called aerobic respiration. Now, we have a couple of scenarios where what if we don't have mitochondria? Well, there are some prokaryotes that, because prokaryotes don't have organ-bound membranes, organelles bound with membranes, they don't have prokaryotes. Prokaryotes don't necessarily have mitochondria, but some prokaryotes will have mechanisms in ATP synthase embedded within their plasma membrane to carry out this process. So some prokaryotes can do this aerobic respiration, but most do not. Most of them do not. Most of them are going to use some sort of a, here's my time. Most of them are going to use some sort of an anaerobic respiration. Now I'm going to pause there and we'll pick up on this next one. So next video.